Hi there, it's Bert here, and in this video I'm going to be talking about Polyversal. Polyversal was a Kickstarter that went on a while ago and it failed, and it's for 6mm miniatures, a 6mm miniature rule set, I should say, and it was something that really interested me. But also why it failed was really interesting to me, and I'd like to talk about that. I'd like to talk a bit about the pros and cons of Polyversal, both as a rule set and as a Kickstarter and so on. And hopefully if they run it again, this might clarify some things for people, might make both the people who made Polyversal but also potential fans understand a little bit more about it, hopefully, and just get a bit of the word out there. So, Polyversal, what is it? Essentially, it was a completely new rule set that someone developed for playing 6mm miniatures with any 6mm miniatures you already own. And that's a big difference because, you know, I've got a lot of 6mm miniatures from a lot of manufacturers, and I don't think all of them quite fit into any one available rule set without a bit of fudging, you know. Probably the most popular being Epic and Epic Armageddon, which a lot of people will know about, and they have their own online fan communities, which is great, but you know, there's issues with that, and I'll get into that. But before we go into that, let's just start with the pros of Polyversal, why I was attracted to Polyversal, and and I have my computer here with some notes, so don't mind me if I keep looking around. So why Polyversal? Well, my first war game was actually Epic. It was the Epic Space Marine, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the idea of the scale. I loved the idea of playing war games at that scale, like general in charge of massive armies, and really feeling that you are in charge of this war, not just this skirmish. So yeah, and as you can guess, as the years went by, it was pretty much impossible to play games of Epic. I don't think... I played maybe 3 or 4 games of Epic in my life that weren't with my mum, you know, like sitting there just kind of humouring me. So I've always kind of loved the idea of getting a great 6mm rule set again. So pros of Polyversal is there are not a lot of rule sets out there in 6mm that I feel actually draw people in anymore. I don't think any of the Epic fan communities are really expanding. They're keeping the people they have, but they're not expanding. Just recently we have Age of Tyrants. It looks great, and that will be able to draw in some additional 6mm players. And some players obviously already fans of the Age of Tyrants universe and so on. It could do quite well out of those, and it might even bring new fans in that weren't fans of the Age of Tyrants universe and weren't 6mm fans. But I don't know to what extent it can do that, honestly. Pretty much everyone on the online forums are saying we're kickstarting for the models. The models look fantastic. Will people use the rules? I don't know. And is there an avenue for bringing in all these old collections? There's not. So that's a big problem. Polyversal is different. You can use current models, you can use whatever models you like in 6mm. I can pull loads of people into Polyversal. I can pull in Epic players, Dirtside players, Age of Tyrants players, and people who just like the look of it. There are other rule sets that can probably pull people into 6mm, but I feel like Polyversal has a better capacity at doing that. Will Polyversal die? Well, I know that's morbid, but it's actually a pro. You know, Epic died. There's still players, but in terms of what it was and what it could have been with continued support, it died. You know, I know of maybe 2 other people who play it in Ireland who live like 150 or more kilometers from me. I've never met them. I know that they exist, but I've never met them. So that's sad, you know. There's no one anywhere near me, and no one is going to buy miniatures on eBay to play Epic. And maybe they'll buy from Onslaught or Troublemaker Games or whatever to play Epic, but you have to already want to. You know, there isn't a lot of incentive outside of your own will there. Polyversal might be an external incentive. please, hopefully. And it's well about it dying. Epic, the Epic communities have done an amazing job with taking those Games Workshop rules and running with them. The problem is, it's not community, it's communities. There's 3 or more different groups playing different versions of Epic with different versions of army lists. And Polyversal would be one centralized one that would be supported by this very passionate developer. Sorry for my cat. So there is some cross-pollination in the different Epic communities. So why add a new community? Well, I think that as I said, the Epic communities don't have growth potential. Polyversal does have growth potential. It potentially has a box set that will end up in stores. I might not want to buy that box set myself, but knowing that it could get into stores is a big draw for me to support them in any way I can. Polyversal definitely has a bigger growth potential than Epic. Epic hasn't had official miniatures in a shop in years. And the proxy miniatures are not really in many shops, they're mostly bought online. So Polyversal as a boxed game in shops is huge. And maybe Age of Tyrants can do the same thing. I do hope it does actually, but I think that Polyversal potentially does it better again because it can draw in the old guard who will push it. And because they already have painted armies that they can use in Polyversal right now. So, customization. Obviously, I've been talking about a lot. Polyversal has customization. You can take units from any army, you can build them up, and you can make rule sets out of that. You customize the stats of each individual unit, and then it assigns that unit a points value, and then once you've built a bunch of those units that you feel represents that army collection that you have, there you go. There's your army list that you can pick units from. So that's great. And you can make and there's a set points value to all of that, which I personally really like in my games. And of course, you can choose how deep you go. There's going to be people who are hardcore. They're going to make green alien brutes. They're going to make, aliens with cobbled together technology who happen to be cultists. And we're going to have, people who worship dark gods and mutate themselves. And we're going to have people who are just a planetary defense force defending a homeworld. But, that's not going to be everyone. Some people are going to come along, and Polyversal already has this, and hopefully it'll have more in the future, but they already have a couple of army lists that you can just pick from yourself, and they have the artwork, and they have the stats, and they have everything worked out. So you can really kind of decide the level of depth you want to get into with it. And that means that if someone wants to make officially sanctioned events, and even tournaments, which would be amazing, you have people who may just want to completely open one and allow everybody to design their lists from scratch. I doubt that'll happen in an event. I think that you'll probably have army lists that are officially sanctioned or sanctioned by the community / tournament organizer, and people will pick lists and armies from that. And that's great. That gives us the flexibility that the Epic community has had to shoehorn into Epic. Okay, next point, and I love this one. Battle fatigue and damage. I loved how you could damage different parts of Titans and reduce its effectiveness in Epic when I played it. And now you can have that, but it's not as funky to do. Titans, it took ages to work out, where does the damage go, what does this do, blah, blah, blah. And in Polyversal, it's really simple. You take damage, one of your dice is reduced to a lower dice. So say you started with a D12, it would be reduced to a D10. And that dice affects how you shoot and how you do other things within the game. So it's a very simple system to show the degradation in a unit's capacity and in its battle fatigue and damage. Okay, this one might seem a bit weird, but designer enthusiasm. Ken Whitehurst. He just really seems to love the game. He has a real passion, both for wargaming, 6mm wargaming, and so on. And he seems to have been enthusiastically trying to sell this game to everyone at these shows and really going for it. And when you have a designer with that level of passion, basically Polyversal is the baby of a guy who's been working on it for years. He's been bringing up and rearing this game for years. And you can see that when he talks about it. And I think that's always a good thing. When you have someone with that passion and you want the community to keep going, and you have someone who's maybe willing even to take on the reins a little bit or stay involved with the community once the game has already come out, that's really good. If he is remaining passionate once the game is out, we can do things like expansions or just introducing new armies and so on to the core rule sets. Maybe if they do end up having an app, uploading images for other people to make use of, or even uploading fully made printable army lists for people. And for a passionate designer to be involved at that stage can be potentially phenomenal. And now we're going into the negatives or cons or criticisms or whatever. For those of you who haven't seen the Kickstarter or haven't heard about Polyversal before, there isn't a lot. I don't have a lot of criticisms about the game itself. But there were problems. One of them was that when the game was first mentioned, it was mentioned by a passionate designer, unfortunately, who was so happy that people were interested in something he had made that it kind of, information was coming out, it was kind of building, and it was turning into something. And then all of a sudden, as he starts to get into the practicalities of design and production, it had to be toned back a lot to almost where nothing was said. And I think a lot of people were frustrated by that, because when they first heard about it, I think they assumed it was coming out soon. Because often when you hear about someone bringing out a game, you're like, oh, well, it must be coming soon. We don't hear about a movie 10 years before it comes out. So I originally heard about Polyversal in either 2012 or 2013. I heard that it was going around to trade shows and stuff in America, which I'll never get to, and that it's exciting and people are talking about it. And then I waited and I waited, and my interest grew, and then my interest plateaued. And I think for a lot of people it plateaued and then started to go down. So that's kind of sad. And it had been mentioned on podcasts, it had been discussed, and and all of a sudden, that kind of just... I think this is because the product is the rules. In most war games, the product is the miniatures. The product is come, join, buy from us. War game companies are kind of like clans. Join our clan. As much as possible, be part of our clan and not other clans. Buy War Machine. Oh, you don't quite like steampunk, buy Hordes. It's not, it's unusual to go outside of that. And Polyversal is only the rules. So once you've kind of mentioned the rules a bit, but aren't ready to let everyone just know what the rules are, it becomes difficult. And from a business standpoint, it did make sense to moderate what was coming out, but from a fan perspective it was problematic. How would I fix that? Personally, I would get in touch with people who make videos on YouTube, like Henna, I think it is, and the Bearded Gamers or something like that, who make videos, well actually I do too I suppose, but who make video battle reports or reviews or whatever, and get the rules into their hands, or some version of them, with the stipulation that they play a game and post it on YouTube by a certain date before the next Kickstarter. And if I saw a battle report online, I would know a lot more if I wanted this. And if I heard someone whose channel I was following, say they liked it, or even if they didn't like it but gave good reasons, and I happened to not mind those reasons, well, I'm going to be kickstarting it anyway again, but it would kind of bring back that hype. It would bring that level of interest. I think the Meeples and Miniatures review that they got is brilliant, and I think that they should push that again right before they bring out their next Kickstarter. Um, and I think that they should have some way for people to interact more with the rules. Even though I know, like, I mean, one of the things I'm most excited about is being able to build the units and then create armies out of that and share ideas with other people. And yet, I don't know if they can allow that to happen without too much of the game being out there before they're ready and just being given away for free. And another thing, and this, I mean, this is kind of leading into my next con about the Kickstarter, is videos in general. So another thing, I mean, just quickly in terms of building hype, you know, I keep hearing about these people who saw it at the show and were really enthusiastic, and some occasionally is someone saying it on Twitter or Ken or Byron saying, oh, these people were excited. And what would be amazing is a couple of short videos just, you know, interviewing these people saying why I like Polyversal, or, you know, like, you know, after their first game at these trade shows, or just even filming them play the game at the trade shows. Something for those of us who don't live in America, essentially. And continuing on with videos, now I have to admit I have not watched every video that was on the Kickstarter and that was related to all the content. I think that there's a couple of reasons for that. I was busy around the time it came out, but also a fair few of the videos didn't really make clear to me in their title what it was that they would be adding information-wise for someone who's already interested, or even for someone who isn't that interested and is on the fence. So, you know, we started out with the Kickstarter video, which Byron has just recently released a blog about not being happy with the Kickstarter video and how hard Kickstarter videos are to do. And I would agree. I think it wasn't great because it's a game that's about the rules. And the first 2 to 3 minutes of the opening video for the Kickstarter didn't really talk about the rules and didn't really talk about the designer, which is an avenue for the rules. And I know he's talked about this in his blog, which was very interesting to read and very, very self-critical in a very positive way, which makes me very happy for the future potential of the next Kickstarter. But, you know, it had some fantastic images in those opening minutes. It had some alright images, and it had some real life images, and they're all intermixed to tell a story. And then it went to not so much of that kind of image where Ken was talking about the game. Now, if they had Ken talking to camera, displaying his passion, and then intermixing it with the best videos that they got best images that they got commissioned, which are fantastic images of, say, one tank or a couple of people, you know, a couple of battle scenes, basically, which looked really good. That would be a lot more engaging and interesting, you know, cutting the kind of stereotypical Kickstarter decent video of cutting between the person presenting it, talking about their passion and how great the game is, with imagery that they've already paid for to make the game. And I don't know what else they need. You know, yeah, they talk about the rules, but in the opening video, I do not want to hear about the story because, well, I don't know if I'll play the story. I might read it. I've read a little bit of it, but, you know. And then in future videos, there was another one where, again, Ken was talking about how I think some of the stats worked, and it was something to do with the tanks and choosing weapons for them or something. And the video was a bit bizarre because because informationally it was fantastic. It was actually stuff I hadn't heard before, but it looked a bit like a PowerPoint presentation made with some very, I don't know what software, and the images of the tank and of how the 360-degree line of fire worked weren't full screen, and the background music was like really happy. The music was kind of a kids' TV music kind of thing, and really it needed kind of something grittier, like the music from Red Alert 1 or something, if you know that computer game. The miniatures that they have for the Kickstarter, the way they were painted was realistically. I think that maybe the people putting this together are from a kind of, realistic historical combat game perspective. But from a sci-fi gamer perspective, when I look at a Kickstarter and when I look at the miniatures, it doesn't matter if the miniatures aren't the point. It doesn't matter if they're already released and they've been out for years. They're painted in a certain way. They're painted with block colors. They don't have camo on them. They don't have camouflage on them. And it would have very almost exaggerated highlighting and shading and so on to really make the miniature pop. Basically, you'd have what the Age of Tyrants people did with their Kickstarter. This really kind of makes 6mm miniatures pop. And if you are, a regular on the TACOM's forum, which is a 6mm forum, you'll see that every year there's a competition for the best painted miniatures, and usually it's not like, I've never seen one with a camo design win, even though I have been kind of reading when I have time and looking at it. Sometimes I don't feel I really know enough about the game. I think that really with some clarity of what exactly you're going to learn in each video, people know better what they should do with each video. And I think that's very hard. I make videos, and when I make my tutorials, I can find that I often end up cutting things that I thought were necessary to include, or I end up having to explain things afterwards, either by adding stuff in after I did the initial video or in the comments or whatever. And it does require some thought to make that work. It has this amazing potential, but it requires the community to be behind it. And we kind of need those old guard to, who were kind of, oh, this is interesting, and then lost some interest, to kind of get back on board. And I think that there will be new players. They had 226 people back the Kickstarter, and I thought that's a bit low. They got, there was a high amount, like the average was $100 per person, something like that. So overall, why should you get Polyversal? Why should you Kickstarter it, especially if you've already done one recently on 6mm? It might be a bit weird that I'm saying this, but I want Polyversal. I want it to be successful because of the potential for picking up and playing it. And I know that's odd because you've to, build things from scratch, and there's so much minutia that you can go into. But if you get a good, decent pick up and play game like that, and then people start putting out their rule sets online, I can potentially travel to other places and actually get a game of 6mm in. And as it is now, there's just 6mm seems to be in trouble for some reason. 28mm war games and various other scales, 15, possibly 20, 10, all this kind of stuff, they all have their successes, and 6 just seems to languish. And it makes no sense, because it really does give a new aspect to your wargaming that you just can't get at those other scales. It's not hard to paint 6mm miniatures. Apart from the perception that it's hard to paint them, I don't know why 6mm is languishing so much. Maybe it's because there was such domination by Epic, and in its wake, and I mean that in the death kind of like Irish wake kind of way, it's nothing's really come out of it. Nothing has really kind of galvanized people, and let's hope Polyversal can do that. Really, and if not, well, what else could? Am I just going to be sitting here with a collection of 2 fairly large 6mm armies, possibly 3, maybe 4 actually, if I'm being honest with myself, and just maybe never playing a game. I really do think people should support Polyversal. They should support the concept of the rules, and they should support the idea of getting this as a box set into shops, because that's going to just open up the world of 6mm to the wider community again. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for listening if you listened this far, and good luck, Polyversal makers.